At my birthday brunch, my sister yelled, "You've always been Mom's favorite." So I pulled out the letter Mom left me, the one she was never supposed to see. "You've always been Mom's favorite, Haven. Just admit it." She said it with a mimosa in one hand and venom in her voice right there at my birthday brunch, in front of my kids, my friends, and her own husband. I could have stayed quiet. I'd done it for years. But instead, I stood up, walked to the drawer in my den, pulled out the letter Mom left me, the one she told me never to share, and read it aloud. My sister was never supposed to see it. But she did. "My name is Haven, I'm 46, and this happened just last month at my home in Asheville, North Carolina. I never imagined that something as seemingly wholesome as a birthday brunch could dredge up 30+ years of buried resentment between two adult women who should have known better. But family doesn't always work like that. To understand what happened that day, you'd have to understand my sister, Rowena, and our late mother, Della. Rowena is 2 years younger than me. She's tough, opinionated, and doesn't let anyone get too close. She married young, divorced fast, remarried a quieter man named Eric, and moved to Winston-Salem, where she teaches high school English. She's sharp, but there's always been something hard in her guardedness I couldn't quite reach. Me? I stayed close to home. Married Neil in my early 30s. Had 2 kids, May and Jonah. I worked in publishing until my mom's health began to decline, and I started working part-time so I could be around more. Mom's decline was slow. It was cruel in the way dementia always is, dignity fading day by day. She lived with us for the final stretch of it. That part matters, though Rowena would probably say it shouldn't. See, the friction between us wasn't always red-hot obvious. It simmered. Small jabs over holidays. Her tendency to keep her distance. My instinct to make peace even when I shouldn't. After Mom died 3 years ago, things got worse. We divided the estate by what little there was. She took the family's old glass vase, a stack of records, and Mom's recipe box. I was left with the house, the paintings, and a sealed envelope addressed only to me. I didn't tell Rowena about the letter. Not because I was hiding it, but because Mom had written, "For heaven's eyes only. Do not share. My last gift." I respected that. Until my 46th birthday. The brunch wasn't extravagant. We're not that kind of family. I made a pot of chili, baked banana bread, and poured mimosas into mismatched stemware from Goodwill. I like comfort. My home's filled with things that hold meaning rather than value. Mom's watercolors, my son's first clay pinch pot, Neil's black and white photos from our early dating days. Rowena arrived late. She was wearing an oversized coat and her signature look of polite disinterest. Eric trailed behind her like a shadow. I hadn't seen either of them since Christmas. She hugged me lightly and gave me a tin of loose-leaf tea. It was nice. But I could tell something was off. Conversations buzzed as people moved around the kitchen and dining room. May queued up a gentle playlist. The house smelled like cinnamon and citrus. Then someone made a comment, maybe Luann, one of my oldest friends, about how much Rowena and I resembled Mom in different ways. It was harmless. Innocent. One of those nostalgic observations people make when they don't know any better. Rowena laughed. But it was sharp, brittle. The room gets quiet in that awkward party way when tension cuts through comfort. She looked at me with something between bitterness and exhaustion. "You've always been Mom's favorite, Haven. Just admit it." I stared at her, stunned. Neil had stopped mid-sip. May froze. Even Eric sat straighter in his chair, blinking slowly like he'd been hit with a gust of cold air. "I mean, you got everything," she went on. "The house. The letters. The art. The guilt trip she left me? That's all I got. A cracked vase and a lecture about forgiveness. I could have ignored it. I could have laughed it off or changed the subject. God knows I've done it 100 times. But something about the way she said it loud and definitive, with all her sadness laid bare, struck a chord I didn't expect. And so, I stood up, walked out of the room, and came back with that letter. The one Mom told me never to share. I didn't even look at anyone else. I just unfolded the paper with shaking hands and started to read. Her handwriting was still neat, almost formal, like she had written it slowly over several days. My dearest Haven, if you're reading this, then I've left you something that I hope will bring you comfort, not burden. I never meant to pit you and Rowena against each other. I know she's always felt I favored you. Maybe I did. Not because you were better but because you needed me more in ways she didn't see. Rowena was always strong. So certain of herself. So fiery. You were the quiet one. You asked questions. You felt everything deeply. You worried about hurting people. I leaned into you because I saw my own softness in you, and I was trying to protect it. That doesn't mean I loved her any less. If I gave you the house, it's because I knew you'd make it a home for others. If I gave you the paintings, it's because you saw what I was trying to capture. She got the vase because it was from my mother's first apartment. It's where she found herself after leaving a terrible marriage. It's not a trinket, it's a symbol of survival. I hoped Rowena would see that. I'm sorry I didn't do better by both of you. But now this love is not measured by what I gave you. It's in everything I tried to pass on. And I loved you both with the same breath. Love, Mom. When I finished reading, I lowered the paper. No one said a word. For the first time in years, Rowena wasn't angry. She wasn't defensive. She looked hurt. Not like a woman lashing out but like a girl who'd been trying to prove something for decades, only to realize she was fighting the wrong battle. She didn't cry. She never does. But she didn't look away. And that, from her, felt monumental. She reached out, almost reluctantly, and asked to see the letter. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held it. She read it slowly, lips moving. Eric leaned closer but didn't interrupt. Neil rubbed my back gently. May disappeared into the kitchen, likely overwhelmed. Rowena eventually looked up at me. I didn't know, she said quietly. About the vase. About all of it. I nodded. Neither did I. Not until after. She folded the letter carefully and handed it back. We didn't say much after that. She asked for another mimosa. We sat at the table a little longer, eating fruit and talking about safer things like weather, traffic, someone's garden renovation. She left an hour later, and for the first time in years, she hugged me like she meant it. After they left, the house settled into a weird kind of quiet. It wasn't the usual post-party cleanup silence. It felt heavier, like something big had shifted and we weren't sure where it was going to land. Neil asked if I was okay. I said I was, but the truth is, I wasn't sure. I wasn't upset, not exactly, but reading that letter aloud had brought up more than I'd expected. Not just about Mom, but about Rowena. About how little we'd really understood each other all these years. I found myself replaying our childhood like an old home movie. There was the time I came home crying from school because my teacher had scolded me in front of the whole class. Mom made me cocoa and let me crawl into her bed even though it was the middle of the afternoon. Rowena had walked in on us and scoffed, "Must be nice." I hadn't thought about that moment in years. But suddenly it was back, bright and sharp. Then there was the time Rowena broke her arm falling out of the neighbor's tree. Mom had been furious, not scared, not doting. Furious. She said, "Why can't you just stay on the ground like Haven?" I remember Rowena looking up from her cast with this look of half confusion, half defiance. Like she didn't understand what she'd done wrong, just that somehow I'd won again. I don't think either of us realized how early that dynamic had started. The good one. The difficult one. Mom never said it outright. But those roles settled over us like invisible cloaks. And we wore them for decades. 2 days after the brunch, Rowena called me. We don't usually talk on the phone. It's mostly brief, transactional, and efficient. But this time, she called. "Hey," she said. No preamble. "I've been thinking about that letter. I told her I had too. There was a pause, long enough that I thought maybe she was done. But then she surprised me. I think I always knew she favored you. But hearing why, she trailed off. It wasn't what I expected. I asked her what she'd expected. I don't know. Some big confessions. Or an apology. But it wasn't that. It was honest. She said the word like it tasted strange. Honest. We talked for almost an hour. About Mom. About childhood. About how we both remembered things differently. She told me how lonely she felt during those years when I was taking care of Mom. That it seemed like I was part of this sacred circle she wasn't allowed into. I admitted I had felt alone too, but for different reasons. I didn't feel chosen. I felt responsible. Tethered. And later, guilty. I used to think you just liked playing the martyr, she said. Now I'm not so sure. She laughed a little. I guess we were both busy being the victim. That landed harder than she probably meant it to. The calls continued after that. Not daily. Not even weekly. But more than we used to. She sent me an old photo she found of us from when we were kids sitting on the porch of our grandparents' place in Burnsville, both of us holding popsicles and grinning like idiots. I don't remember that day. But seeing the photo shook something loose. We were happy once. Before the labels. Before the comparisons. Before we both decided love had to be earned and measured. A week later, Rowena drove back up to Asheville, alone this time. She said Eric had to work, but I think she wanted to come on her own. We took a walk around the Grove Park neighborhood, ended up getting coffee and sitting on a bench overlooking the mountains. She told me she'd been thinking about writing a letter back to Mom. She won't read it, she said with a sardonic smile, but maybe I need to say it anyway. I told her that sounded like a good idea. And it really did. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the vase. The one she'd taken from Mom's things. It was chipped on the rim, but still beautiful in that old-world way. I googled it, she said. Turns out it was made in 1946. Same year Grandma left her first husband. I blinked. You're kidding. She shook her head. She packed one suitcase and this vase. Mom said she walked away from everything else. She held it out to me. I don't want to keep this in storage anymore. But I also don't want it at my house. Not yet. Will you keep it for a while? I nodded, too choked up to say much. That night, I placed the vase on the shelf beside Mom's paintings. It didn't match the others. It wasn't part of the set of things I'd been given. But in some strange way, it belonged there. Like the missing piece in a picture I didn't know was unfinished. It's funny. For all the time Rowena and I spent fighting over what Mom gave us, it took something she didn't mean to share to finally bring us together. A few days after Rowena brought the vase, I caught myself staring at it more than once. It sat on the shelf above the fireplace slightly off-center, surrounded by Mom's softer-toned paintings of Appalachian ridgelines and misty hollows. The vase was a stark contrast. Deep green with an almost harsh shape, angular and proud. Like Rowena. Like Grandma, I suppose. Maybe that's why she couldn't live with it yet. It demanded attention. It carried weight. Neil noticed me looking at it one morning while we were drinking coffee. You've been quiet lately, he said, not accusing, just observing. That's one of the things I've always loved about him, he doesn't push. I've just been thinking, I replied. About Mom. About Rowena. About how much I misunderstood both of them. He nodded. That letter changed things, huh? Yeah, I said. But not just the letter. The way she reacted to it. I thought she'd get defensive, or angry, or accuse me of making it up. But she didn't. She listened. Neil smiled. Maybe she needed to hear it from Mom to believe it. That made sense. In our family, love always seemed to be something you had to prove through sacrifice, through silence, through staying when you wanted to leave. And Mom, for all her strengths, she never knew how to love us the same way at the same time. A week later, I got a text from Rowena. It was a photo. A handwritten letter on a yellow legal pad. Her caption said, "Mom, you don't get the last word after all." I laughed. It was the most Rowena thing she could have said. I read the letter slowly, my thumb scrolling down the image line by line. She thanked Mom for the good and called her out on the bad. She said she didn't blame her anymore, but she couldn't pretend it didn't hurt. She told her how she always felt like the wrong daughter, too loud, too stubborn, too much. And how she was finally starting to believe that maybe that wasn't true. She ended the letter with, "I wish you could have said this stuff while you were alive. But I guess I'm saying it now for both of us." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied, "That's the bravest thing you've ever written. Thank you for sharing it." She didn't respond right away. But that night, she called. Just to talk. No agenda. No tension. We talked about the past in a way we never had before. Not like lawyers picking through old arguments, but like sisters trying to make sense of a shared language they'd only just started learning. She told me more about her memories of Mom's last years and how angry she felt, not just because I was taking care of her, but because she couldn't. "I couldn't face it," she said. The way she looked near the end. The way she forgot things. It scared the heck out of me. "I know," I said quietly. "It scared me too. But I didn't know how to ask for help." We sat with that for a long time. Not apologizing. Not blaming. Just understanding. Later that month, we decided to clean out the old storage unit we'd been paying for since Mom died. It was the final resting place for a lot of unresolved emotion, boxes of old photos, faded curtains, old journals no one had read, and a few relics we'd fought about years ago and quietly left to gather dust. We met on a Saturday morning in March. The kind of crisp, wind-whipped day that feels like it can't decide between winter and spring. Rowena wore her hair tied back in a bun, no makeup, dressed in layers like she was bracing for battle. But her expression was softer than I expected. We opened the unit and were hit with the smell of cardboard and old cedar. The first box we opened held a stack of recipe books and our grandmother's church bulletins. Nothing special. Nothing painful. Just forgotten. Then came the photo albums. We sat on the concrete floor, flipping through them slowly, pausing here and there to point out faces we didn't remember and clothes we wished we didn't. "Look at this one," Rowena said, holding up a picture of Mom in her 20s, long hair, bell-bottoms, leaning against a cherry-red Plymouth. "She was so beautiful," I said. "She looked free," Rowena murmured. That word lingered. We didn't say much else as we kept going. Until Rowena opened a beat-up shoebox and pulled out an envelope marked, "To be sorted." Inside were dozens of small notes, torn scraps of paper with Mom's handwriting lists, quotes, and what looked like letters she never sent. One of them stopped me cold. It said, "I wish I knew how to love them the same way. But they're so different. And I'm afraid they'll never forgive me for that." Rowena read it too. She didn't speak, just reached over and touched my shoulder. We sat there in that storage unit, two grown women surrounded by relics of a mother we both loved and struggled to understand. And for once, there was no competition. No scorekeeping. Just a shared sense of grief and maybe, finally, healing. On the drive back, Rowena followed me in her car. At a red light, I saw her in the rearview mirror, windows down, hair blowing in the wind, singing along to something. I smiled. Not because everything was fixed. Not because all the years of tension had vanished. But because at that moment, I saw a version of her I hadn't seen in years. Carefree. Light. Maybe, I thought, we're not just grieving Mom. Maybe we're grieving the versions of ourselves we thought we had to be in her presence. And maybe we're finally becoming who we actually are. A few weeks after the storage unit cleanout, Rowena invited me to Winston-Salem. This was new. She wasn't the type to ask people into her space. Her house had always been more fortress than home, pristine, orderly, and emotionally sterile. So when she texted, "Come spend the weekend. I want to show you something," I raised my eyebrows. Neil was thrilled. "This could be a real breakthrough," he said. I wasn't so sure. But I went. She met me at the door in jeans and a worn UNC sweatshirt, barefoot, with her hair pulled up in a way that made her look younger than I remembered. Her house, to my shock, was different. Warmer. Lived in. A new plant sat on the windowsill. Books were stacked messily on the coffee table. And in the corner of the living room, framed and prominently displayed, was the letter Mom had left her. The one Rowena wrote after the brunch. She caught me looking. Eric helped me frame it. Though it was about time I stopped pretending I didn't need closure. We had wined that night and talked about everything: parenting, aging, love, fear, how hard it was to be a daughter when your mother couldn't explain how she loved you. And then she told me the real reason she asked me there. "Do you remember Mom's old attorney? Mr. Renshaw?" I nodded. He was a quiet, pipe-smoking man with thick glasses and a voice like a sleepy owl. "Well," Rowena said, taking a sip of her wine, "I found something." She stood up, walked into her bedroom, and came back with a slim manila folder. "I requested copies of Mom's estate documents last month," she said, "just to make peace with everything. And I noticed something strange. A second will. Drafted 2 years before the one we executed." I sat up straight. "A second will?" "Yeah. One she never filed with the court. Probably because she had a change of heart or forgot to update the filing. But this one's different." She opened the folder and slid the contents toward me. I skimmed it quickly. In that earlier version of the will, the house had been left to both of us. The painting split. Even the vase was mentioned, with a note, "For Rowena, with all my pride for how far you've come." I looked up at her, stunned. "She meant to be fair," I whispered. Rowena nodded. "At some point, yes. But then she changed it. I guess after she got sick. Or maybe she just got scared. The old me might have felt guilty. Might have wondered if I had inadvertently benefited from Mom's late-stage confusion. But not this time. Not after everything." I looked at Rowena and saw that she wasn't bitter. She wasn't looking to undo anything. She was building towards something else entirely. "You know what I've been thinking?" she said, her tone sharpening. "For years, I let myself stew in this idea that you had everything, and I had scraps. But now I see Mom gave you things. But she trusted me with the truth. Even if it came later." I let that settle in. "So what now?" She smiled. "Now, I want to use it." And that's when she told me her plan. She wanted to create an art exhibit using Mom's work. A retrospective of sorts, but framed through the lens of family, memory, and miscommunication. A story told through Mom's paintings, letters, even our own reflections and audio clips. She'd already pitched it to the local museum and gotten interested. "I want to tell the story of a mother who couldn't say what she meant, and the daughters who had to figure it out too late," she said. "And," she added, eyes gleaming, "I want the opening night to be at your house. The one Mom gave you. The house she thought was just yours. I think it should be where the truth finally gets its stage." I burst out laughing. Not because it was ridiculous, but because it was perfect. This wasn't revenge in the way people think of it. No cruelty. No confrontation. But there was something deeply satisfying about the idea of turning all the quiet resentment, all the years of passive bitterness, into something visible and unignorable. We would tell our side. All of it. The exhibit took months to plan. We went through every painting, every journal entry, and picked the ones that told the real story. We added narration of Rowena reading some of Mom's letters, and me sharing my memories of caregiving, of quiet breakdowns in the pantry, of folding laundry with tears in my eyes. There was a section devoted to the infamous letter. The one Mom left me. And beside it, Rowena's response letter. Visitors walked through the rooms of the house like it was a living museum. The den became a listening room. The dining room, a gallery. The backyard, an installation called What Wasn't Said, where blank canvases hung from the trees with prompts for guests to write letters they never sent. The opening night was surreal. People came. They walked. They wept. Some asked if we had made it all up, it was too raw, too real. But we hadn't. This was our truth. Finally visible. And real revenge? Rowena got her moment not of triumph over me, but of clarity in spite of Mom. She stood in front of that old green vase and gave a short speech to the guests. I used to think I lost, she said. That I was forgotten. Overlooked. But this vase belonged to a woman who left her past behind. Who chose herself. And now, I finally see that strength didn't skip a generation. It was waiting for me. I just had to claim it. People clapped. Some cried. Eric took pictures. I stood near the back, heart swelling not from vindication, but from relief. Rowena had rewritten the ending. Not by punishing anyone, but by stepping into the spotlight with dignity, after a lifetime in the shadows. In the weeks that followed, the story was picked up by a local newspaper. Then a regional magazine. There was talk of turning it into a short documentary. But more than that, people reached out. Strangers. Friends. Women who'd grown up with complicated mothers and silent fathers. Siblings who hadn't spoken in years. Letters started arriving at the house, handwritten, tear-stained, full of confessions from people who hadn't said what they needed to in time. We kept them in a box. And eventually, we added them to the exhibit. So, was it revenge? Not in the traditional sense. But there's something powerful in taking the story that wounded you and retelling it on your terms. Something potent about honoring your pain out loud, especially when you were taught to keep it quiet. Rowena didn't just get even. She got seen. And that, more than anything Mom ever left us, was the real inheritance.